in order to explore the relationship between questions and research designs. In this session, we would discuss the why types of questions in the light of some examples, and then their appropriate research designs, that what types of research designs could be suitable, could be appropriate for addressing why types of questions. We know that why types of questions are used in order to explore relationships between variables or among phenomena, right? So the example could be that why some variables influence others, right? So such types of questions are used in why questions. And another example would be that why simple relationships exist between phenomena, right? So that's one example, that we might be exploring relationships and we might be exploring causation, various types of causal relationships. Let me give you one example. Kobayashi 2002, this study is basically about exploring the method effects on reading comprehension, test performance, text organization, and response format, right? So this is basically the study which explored the relationship between reading comprehension and text organization and response format, okay? Within this study, actually, the researcher is exploring causation, right? That what causation is there, what's the nature of causation, right? So for such a study, she needs to go for why types of questions. And for why types of questions, she would be exploring this causal relationship, right? Other terms which could be used replacing effects in why types of questions are like impact, right? Influence, improve, or change, right? So these are the terms which are used to explore the causal relationship, right? Because these studies where these terms are used, such studies are based on results of something, right? And results are, explored in studies like experimental studies, right? Or maybe causal relationship studies or causal comparative relationship-based studies. So in such studies, such terms are used, and we are exploring the impact of something. So what is impact? Basically, that's the causation, the impact of independent variable on dependent variable, the influence of independent variable on dependent variable or variables, right? More than one. And then it could also be explored using terms like improve or improvement or change or roll-off, right? So these are such studies. When these terms are used, these are based on why types of questions, and we can address why types of questions using such research designs, okay? And such a study like Kobayashi 2002, it could be qualitative and quantitative, and it could be exploratory or confirmatory, and it could be applied or basic, right? So the possibility is that why types of questions could be explored when you are doing a theoretical research or when you are solving a problem using applied research, right? Similarly, it could be addressed why types of questions when you are collecting data using qualitative techniques or quantitative techniques. And similarly, you might have a hypothesis in the beginning, so it could be a confirmatory study, or you may be exploring without having any hypothesis. And in this case, it is, exploratory study. So why types of questions are explored using such types of research designs. Other examples for why types of questions are when you are exploring causal qualitative studies, right? The nature of study is qualitative, and you are exploring causation. You are actually exploring the relationship. In such studies, why types of questions are used, right? So let me give you one example, Wesche and Peribacht, right? So Wesche and Peribacht 2000 is a study when they explored that why a particular enhanced reading method works better than reading only for learning vocabulary, right? So reading only and then enhanced reading method, right? So they wanted to just check relationship for learning vocabulary and using these two possibilities, okay? So such a study is, a qualitative study, right? And it is exploratory study, and it is an applied sort of study, because the researchers wanted to teach this learning vocabulary, and that's why it is based on the acquisition of vocabulary, which is the applied kind of study, okay? So that's an example of why types of questions. And then the possibility is that we can also have causal comparative designs for addressing why types of questions, right? Like we can address why types of questions using causal comparative designs, right? So we are actually exploring causation in comparison with more than one variable, right? And the design is to address why types of questions, right? And for such studies, we might be using terms like effect or impact and influence, right? So effect, impact and influence, we are concerned with causal comparative designs, where we would explore using why types of questions. Last but not the least, why types of questions are also ideal questions for experimental and quasi-experimental studies, right? In other words, we can the best explore experimental studies and quasi-experimental studies while using why types of questions. Experimental studies are the studies when we have two separate groups. One is the experimental group, and the second is the the control group, right? So the control group is not given any sort of treatment, and the experimental group is given treatment, right? So such type of studies are based on why questions. When we want to explore that why or how a particular relationship exists. And quasi-experimental designs are the studies when we have the same group. We don't have separate groups, right? So we have the same group, we give it some treatment, and then ultimately we just check the influence or the impact or the effect of that treatment, right? So for such studies, why types of questions are ideal questions.